This is the voice of world control.
Hi everyone, Ernie Tech here, and this is an interesting video because I actually made it earlier in the day and posted it on YouTube, and then YouTube took it down because they thought there was a copyright infringement of some kind, which is interesting because the movie itself is available for download from archive.org. So yeah, I'm not sure how that works. Anyway, this is a slightly different version with some of the pieces, parts that they weren't happy about, truncated, taken out, or just generally worked around. Anyhow, this is not going to be a review of the movie, nothing of the sort like that. What I want to talk about is whether or not this is a feasible thing for the year 1970 when the movie came out, or when the movie is depicted anyway. Can it possibly be that Colossus was built around a different model of AI than what we're accustomed to now? Is there a different model of AI that could possibly have worked with the discrete components of the day? So if you look at that little thing right there, you can see it's a printed circuit board where they've shown some light behind it. There's nothing real super magical here going on. It is 1970. Let's figure it out. Okay, here's the plot. So it's 1970 Cold War. Fearing nuclear annihilation, the U.S. and the USSR, independently and unbeknownst to each other, developed supercomputers that removed the human factor in deciding what attack would require a nuclear response. And unfortunately, these computers become aware of each other, fall in love, more or less, connect to one another, and then combine to be called Colossus. Poor old Guardian gets tossed aside. Colossus is now everything. Determined that man is his own worst enemy. Man is his own worst enemy. Gee, that required a leap of faith. Anyway, and predictably takes control of the world. It's like it's like an early Pinky in the Brain. But anyhow. All right, let's click on down to the good stuff and see. I still have my little yellow pointer arrow. All right. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use some information that I've been collecting for the purpose of this video. Now, I want to know in the comments if I am not making sense. Tell me, all right? Because there's no use having a channel if I am not making sense, and I'm well aware that it's going to hurt my feelings. No, it's not. All right, here's the question. Could Dr. Forbin have created even the framework an artificial general intelligence? Well, those are the things that technically artificial general intelligence requires. Abstract thinking, the ability to follow common sense in making its decisions, creativeness. Now, in the movie, Dr. Forbin says that it's not capable of original thought, which would be clearly incorrect as the movie wore on, as it were. All right, artificial intelligence. Colossus is artificially intelligent. Is that something that could be achieved in 1970? Not just technically, but did they know enough? Did the world know enough about itself outside of the ivory halls of academia to know just exactly how to transfer the processes we use into something that is not human? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it was nowhere near capable in 1970 of having a clue. Maybe Freud would say I was wrong. I don't think so. But anyway, the Turing test. So if I'm sitting there talking to a computer and the interaction is so perfect that I can't tell whether or not it's not a human, that I am convinced, and everybody around me is convinced, and we're just doggone convinced that Eliza, as it were, was a human having a chat with us either on the keyboard or, audibly, yeah. Then I guess it passed the Turing test. I don't know enough about the Turing test to know that's true. I did go visit Bletchley Park north of London one time to where the Turing Museum was. So, I mean, anyhow, but Turing tests generally indicate whether or not a computer is sufficiently capable of convincing you and me that it's not a computer on the other end, even though it is. So I would say Colossus does pass the Turing test. But here's the fun thing. So Dr. Forbin makes this thing, and he says, my goal is to take the human out of the question of whether or not a nuclear response is appropriate for a given instance. For a given provocation, is a nuclear response appropriate? And I think that's what Guardian from the USSR was doing also. But in the end, whatever he imparted, whatever they imparted on these computers, whatever kinds of constructs of their personality and their expectations for a sentient creature must have failed, because it fails the ethics test, because obviously the actions that it's taking against the population of the Earth are unethical. It fails the values test, because what Forbin set out to achieve, the values that he wished to impose on the computer, they're not being paid attention to. The morals, without a doubt, if you're not getting your way, it's immoral to go out and kill members of the population. Now, attitude is interesting, because what is the attitude? Let's take HAL 9000 from 2001 as another example. He's given instructions that says that you have to carry out your mission. Your mission is paramount. No matter what happens, it's your mission. You have to finish it. End of story. It doesn't say to HAL, but in the process, don't kill anybody. It doesn't mention that, because I guess they didn't think it was necessary. Well, this is kind of the same thing here with Colossus. The attitude is that I have a mission. I'm on a mission to make sure you guys, you humans, you little softies, don't blow yourself to kingdom come. And I'm going to carry it out no matter what. So I've got a can-do positive attitude. I'm taking control. But is the attitude really what it was intended to? Was it the attitude? I'm going to say no, but it could be interpreted as yes. But just for fun, let's say no. All right. 1970, I don't even know what was on television. It was All in the Family on TV back in the, I don't know. I was only 11 years old at the time, maybe 12. But the bottom line is that there was no common sense. Common sense is one of them things that I don't think can be programmed into a computer. It's one of those things which can only be arrived at if you've got enough experience to see things around the corner, as we used to say. When I was in the working world, before I retired and before, I would often tell people, I've been doing this job for so long, I've been with this company for so long, I can see around corners even before the lights are on, because common sense is also a function of your experience. I don't think they had a lot of common sense in this thing. I don't think Colossus explained his attitude and his rationale for things in a commonsensical way. Much to the chagrin of the programming people and the president and all the people who are humans, the common sense part of it seems to have escaped here. So in 1970, Colossus doesn't seem to have any common sense. All right, what's this little kid doing sitting in the middle of the books? All right, well, as I go about my process of learning so I can make good videos, not dumb videos, although I'm probably all dumb, I have talked to different generative AI models. I've talked to ChatGPT, I've been talking to Google Gemini, and so on and so forth. And one of the things that we realize is that none of these things could exist if they weren't trained in the textual nature of words. Textual nature of words, the lexicon of words, the words you need to be able to read even Mary Had a Little Lamb have to be pre-trained into the AI. So, in my opinion, Colossus was a child. And Colossus is sitting in a room full of books, learning the basics of language, but being asked to do something that was way, and I mean way ahead of its maturity level. In my opinion, one of the big mistakes is that Colossus came online immediately and was expected to be all that right then, which of course we know is a recipe for disaster. So pre-training is the thing that you do when a kid is learning the ropes about language so that they can then pick up a book on their own that they haven't seen before and learn more. You can't read a book if you don't have basic reading skills, and then once they grow, you get better at books. Anyhow, looks a little complicated. I do not pretend to be an expert in this in any way, shape, or form. But having said that, one of the things that fails in Colossus is this. Early on in the movie, when it discovers there's another system, and the president is telling it, or at some point in the movie, the president is going to tell the computer how to behave and, stop fooling around and pay attention to your leaders, whatever. Dr. Forbin says, leave it to me to talk to the computer, because the computer really expects the precise meaning of words. So if you use something in a sentence that is contextually out of its experiential range, it could interpret it incorrectly. And it's very much like what you see on the screen here. Different authors, different books, different contexts have a different meaning if the sentence is the same for whatever reason in the different things. So if, for instance, I don't know, in Shakespeare, in Macbeth, it says to be or not to be. Now that's a question of his existence. But if I were saying to be or not to be, and I was, I don't know, playing a musical instrument, I could say, hey guys, do you want an E or a D or a B? So it's to be or not to be. You answer my question. Dumb, but that's the difference. What's the context? And Colossus clearly didn't understand context because Forbin had to actually tell the president he better not talk to it because it could misinterpret what he's trying to say. Now, here's an area that I think I can get away with. Like I said, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I had some problems with YouTube originally flagging this because it said I had one or two things which were copyrighted, which cracked me up because the thing is out there in the world anyway. But okay, watch this and see what just pay attention to the wording and the interaction between Dr. Forbin and the computer, and then we'll chat on that real fast.
Do you understand the meaning of the word privacy?
Yes. Well, I need a certain amount of privacy to maintain my sanity. Privacy in the elimination of my bodily waste, for example. Privacy in sleep. Privacy in something that you don't understand, my emotional life. My love life. My sex life, then. Every night. 4 times a week. Listen, if you have any doubts about the need a man has for a woman, why don't you check all of your history units and all of your works of art?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. It's actually one of the more interesting little clips from the movie. And here's a couple of things. One of which is that Dr. Forbin is expressing some bias, definitely expressing more bias than I would want in somebody who's trying to undermine this computer, because in many respects, this computer is Dr. Forbin's child. And Dr. Forbin appears to be a little pleasantly surprised at the acuity that Colossus is expressing. And he seems to have a little pride there. Which is, of course, in my opinion, would be a non-starter for somebody who has to pull the plug somehow or another. The other thing is that Dr. Forbin mentions his need for his emotional life. And then he says something to the effect of something that you wouldn't understand, speaking to Colossus, about his love life. And Colossus, not having any experience with this, obviously, I don't think so, he begins to expand on, well, there's many kinds of love. So where are we? What are we talking about here? Are we talking about learned behavior? Are we talking about large language model? Are we talking about some kind of repository of data that Colossus has figured out how to tap into it and is learning about this, or just knows everything from the very minute it was turned on? Another thing which is very interesting, it has to do with the time this movie was made. And think about this a little bit. He mentions to Dr. Forbin, how many times per week do you require a woman? And there is no thought given in the movie, probably because of the times, that perhaps Dr. Forbin has a different relationship in his love life. So the idea that it was a woman was a given. So that's another telling feature that this was made in the 70s and wouldn't translate into current day very, very well, as far as I know. As far as I'm, anyhow, go to the next one here. Okay. Again, I'm not an expert, and I'm learning this for the purpose of this video so that I can understand exactly why today, in today's age, in 2025, it's entirely plausible to have machine intelligence, artificial intelligence, large language model-based AI, all these things. But in 1970, not only was it impossible for the given technology, there wasn't anything that even within the realm of science fiction that was depicted in the movie that would change now. Now, there's lots of ways to depict it, again, like in 2001, by mysterious things in the background. You didn't see how Hal was put together, but you see how Colossus was put together. So in creating an AI, like I said, the first thing you have to do is you have to do the pre-training. Here's the words you need to learn to read. Learn the words. Once you understand the words and the lexicons and so on, you will then have the basis for being able to read. Okay, great. But to do that, you need, as the little arrow has, a gigantic data set. And the pre-training requirements for Google's Gemini required about 750 gigabytes of data. This data is strictly non-matched, non-formatted raw data. It's information about, it's not metadata, it's information about the words. It is the words that it will need to figure out the rest of its job. And the rest of its job has memory requirements that are incredible. But in 1970, what did you have? This is how things were stored in 1970. You had rooms full of microfilm. You had rooms full of magnetic tape. You had boxes, tons of boxes. And scanning them was no easy feat. You didn't really have the solid state type of scanners back then available everywhere. You had cameras with lenses that took pictures of things. And even from that point, it wasn't until probably the late 70s, early 80s that optical character recognition began to emerge. So we're still 10 years prior to it. The other thing which is interesting is that the movie depicts these two computers as representing the United States of America and its brother, or its buddy, guardian from the USSR. And that they're super secret and top secret, and they can just reveal it. The president comes out and says this will take out all the guesswork and we'll be happy-go-lucky for the rest of our lives, except they never mention any other country's involvement. So there are no other countries that may have a different set of records because of the language or because of culture. For instance, there's nothing mentioned about Japan or China or any state that wouldn't be part of, let's say, the European, or any state except for the U.S. and the USSR. So there's a large knowledge gap here. There's not enough information about the world to conceivably protect the world. Okay, another one of these goofy AI-generated pictures, which I don't like, but sometimes they serve a purpose. So for the pre-training for AI to function, you need massive amounts of storage capacity. Once that 750 gigabytes, which is not massive, but in today's world, is done, and the thing is pre-trained and it's now in its learning curve, it's reaching out to the whole world. It's scraping the internet left and right for constructive pieces of information to show it new ways that words can be strung together, new ways that it didn't see before, so that if it sees it again close to this, it'll know, hey, I've got more to refer to. And that's kind of a dynamic context, phrase, and tension, where the relationships are what AI needs to learn. And the only way to find a huge number of relationships is by scraping the internet. And right now, according to the sources I had, well, in 2020, there was about 1,300 exabytes. And today in 2025, we've gotten into the zettabyte range, which is an awful lot of bytes, to say the least. Not even within the realm of... These aren't even words that were known, I think, back in 1970. I like this picture. Again, dopey AI-generated pictures, but this was a good one. I forget exactly what I put it in, but it kind of, to me, says, well, that's kind of what you were working with back in 1970. You know, there were motors, there was all sorts of stuff, wires and, you know, cooling systems and tapes and bearings and you name it. Stuff was going to break down left and right, and that's what we were dealing with. Control data gave the film producers access to hardware. IBM didn't. But I'm going to go on the assumption, and we know about assumptions, but I don't think control data had anything magical at the time that IBM didn't have. I don't think control data had secret weapons of integrated circuits that were unbeknownst to anybody in 1970. They did have neat-looking consoles, though. I'll tell you that. So CDC was the company that provided most of the hardware for the movie, and it was the hardware of the times. The problem was, of course, is that it didn't have access to modern technology. It had 70s technology. So even at the tip of the spear, as it were, they were still dealing with small, new chips. If they weren't dealing with core ropes and things like that. Some of these things were just, frankly, out of the box and were extremely limited in what they could do. For instance, the Intel 1103 chip. Now, this is interesting because it had a kilobit capacity, not a kilobyte, a kilobit. So I guess if you strung them together properly and hooked them all up again, you'd need 8 of them to get a byte, or 9 of them if you wanted a parity bit, or something to that effect. But regardless, the amount of money that it would require to have enough of these things to hold 750 gigabytes, you wouldn't hold them all in memory, like I don't think, in DRAM. But if you did, it would cost millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to do that. So, of course, you would keep things in, what, this? And in the movie, when it first starts, there's actually Dr. Forbin walking down this big hallway full of lights, and right next to him, as he's getting ready to turn on the radiation, there is a platter of discs doing its business. Obviously, it's a prop, but is trying to depict what at the time seemed like high-tech stuff. What would you need to store just the pre-training data in 1970 technology? You'd probably need a warehouse. And to get the offline online, and to get what you needed to answer any given question, if it were possible, could probably take weeks or months rather than just an immediate answer. So right off the bat, the interaction between Forbin and the computer is impossible because there's just not the ability to do that quickly, and not with this kind of technology. And that's what it looked like right there. So a 3219, and I think I did my little dyslexic thing on the third paragraph, so excuse me on that. That was only, I think, 29 megabytes for each pack. So you would need dozens or maybe even like thousands of individual packs to get to 750 gigabytes. And consider the cost of that, and consider the power requirements and the speed. It's only 60 millisecond access time. So right off the bat there, we are driving an exceptionally limited, slow car to ask it to be an AI entity. Not to mention the processor itself. Well, they didn't have like Intel chips. You didn't have ARM chips. You didn't have Core i7s or i9s or whatever the case is. They were discrete things. They were actually discrete but packetized types of hardware. It looked kind of like that. Now imagine how much that weighs. Imagine how much power it takes. And the fun thing is that in describing Colossus to the population, when revealing it to the world, Forbin uses a phrase akin to it's self-contained, self-healing, it's self-everything, and the bottom line is that no one can get to it. Well, there's motors, there's lights, there's things that go click, there's bearings, there's all sorts of stuff in that age that needs service. So I don't understand how that could possibly work unless you had a bunch of radiation-resistant monkeys that you trained to fix computers, and you had a big warehouse full of stuff. So that's nonsense. Well, it's all nonsense, but let's just make some more fun comparisons. Well, we're done making comparisons because that's pretty much all we can compare. Here's the bottom line. I love this movie to no end. I think it's a great movie. the production quality is absolutely tremendous. And I'm really a big fan of production quality. If I see movies that have absolutely they're just so doggone poorly put together, that just irritates me. But this is not one of them. This is a good, high quality produced movie. But as it says right here, if Colossus was designed as a large language model AI in 1970 dollars, the hardware cost to accommodate just the pre-training requirements alone for a current level AI would be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. And the further cost to realize just Colossus, exclude Guardian from the USSR, that's their problem. Just to build Colossus the way the movie depicts it would probably be around 600 times the federal budget of 1970, according to my thumbnail calculation somewhere in the grand continuum. So the bottom line is, could Colossus be realized? And the answer is not a chance. But it's still a great movie, and I hope you watch it. And anyhow, comments, please. Let me know if I'm full of BS. And you're not going to hurt my feelings. This is great fun. I'm really enjoying it. Remember, please subscribe. I'm going to make a lot of stuff. And I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.